Hello and welcome. This is Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap, and I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host. I created this show now 6 seasons ago, and it is to share resources that help women navigate career and life challenges and to know they're not alone. So each week, my guest and I co-create a show to encourage women to be more confident, resilient, and brave, and to know they are not alone in their careers and their lives. So, if you're inspired by something you hear today and you want more of the same, please subscribe, comment, share, and be sure to check out the show notes below for ways to connect with my guest and me. Now, I hear a lot about how strong leaders need empathy, among many other important traits. So, are you ready to unlock the power of empathetic leadership? We're going to delve into the meaning of empathy and its significance as an essential quality in leaders and in the workplace. My guest, Mell Balment, is an empathy expert who hails from Australia and is on a mission to establish the Empaths Embassy. Her goal is to guide high achieving leaders in transforming the chaos they experience into a state of confident and powerful calmness. Empathy is a sensitivity that permeates our everyday lives and interactions. However, if left unattended, it can leave us energetically drained from constant people pleasing or overwhelmed by the emotions we absorb from others. So, Mell will shed light on how to master this trait and embrace it as a gift. And by doing so, we can become empathetic leaders who inspire through our own example. So, Mell, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. It is the end of my day. It is the beginning of yours, because you're coming from Australia. But I would love for us to start by sharing a bit of your journey and why you now specialize in empathy.
Nice. Great question. One I get asked quite a bit. So a bit of my story. I guess let's start at the beginning a little bit. I grew up deeply misunderstood. I didn't understand that term back then. Uh, Felt displaced. And I kind of landed on this. I don't know if you can see it up here. My little lone wolf character is how I felt growing up. Um, I was the tomboy, but I was kind of girly. I was deeply unhappy at home, but I had this outgoing kind of personality and nature. I didn't fit in anywhere. Going through school was not fun at all. I was suicidal. In fact, I wasn't just suicidal. I did attempt to take my life. And I say attempt, I just wasn't successful at it. And then through my 20s, well, teens and 20s, just didn't know myself, didn't understand where I fitted in. I didn't understand why I couldn't build relationships with people. Now, taking out my childhood abuse, taking all of that, which now makes complete sense to me, it meant I felt lonely a lot. It felt that people were judging me and I had to do things to fit in. And so people pleasing became quite a good trait for me. And so that journey began into my young adult years as a woman, kind of giving myself away, particularly to men, with the aspirations of being accepted, of feeling worthy. And now looking back on that, not only can I see how I was empathic and feeling the things around me, I was also very disassociated from my own happiness. So the journey has been a beautiful one of development, of self-love, of all those words that are kind of bandied around. And now I deeply understand them. I help other people transition through their journeys, through their careers and their lives, to understand I am enough here now with what I've got, even if I am aspiring for more in the future. So if you'd like me to answer the moment I realized I was an empath, I can go into that story if you wish.
Not yet. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I want, first of all, I think it's really important that we kind of set the context for this conversation, because I'm not sure everyone, so we hear the word, especially where it is associated with leadership. We hear the term empathy or empathetic, as you said, bandied about a lot in social media, in things that we read about leadership. Let's define empathy right here, right now, for the context of this conversation. And let's also define what an empath is.
Thank
Could
you.
you do that for us?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought it back to that basic foundation, because one of the things that's very, very misunderstood is I'm full of empathy. I am empathetic versus being an empath. So at the high level, really simple terms, being empathetic is different. And what that means is we have compassion, and we can put ourselves in the shoes and sympathize, as in we haven't gone through, but we can imagine what that would be like, which is having empathy. Or we can empathize, which is I have gone through that and I can imagine what it would be like for you because I've experienced something. That's having empathy, experiencing empathy with someone, versus an empath who doesn't only cognitively experience it, they emotionally, physically have a resonance at the same time. So it's not just feeling it, cognitively being aware of it, it's physically experiencing simultaneously. Now, there are different types of clear senses, and the common one is empathy. We're feeling the emotion. So let's go back to the definition. I'm going to refer to my notes because there's a dictionary yucky definition. There's two of them that I don't really like. So people Google it and go, this is what you will find. A person with a paranormal ability to perceive the mental or emotional state of another individual. So that's a perception of paranormal ability.
And so that's the description or definition in the dictionary of an empath.
Yes, that's one.
Okay.
And then there's another one, which is closer. Abilities to neurologically, which is the brain and the body, neuro and brain logic resonating with the energy around you, such as the thoughts and emotions. So that's then leaning more into what the science has proven. We are experiencing it simultaneously. We're resonating on the same frequency of emotion,
right,
as the other person.
So, so just to give an example of this, Mel, I believe I am an empath as well. I remember so many times walking into a room of people and viscerally feeling that there is something not right in this room. Correct. I had no idea what had just transpired before I walked in.
So to give that full circle, I grew up with this low-level anxiety. And I didn't know how to control it. I didn't know what triggered it. I didn't know how to get myself through it. And now, thinking and believing most of my life into my 30s, that I was overly sensitive and there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Turns out, my definition, a person with abilities to resonate with the energy around us. We are feeling the tension. Now, this is not woo-woo. We have all experienced, as you just described,
Yeah.
a moment of tension when there's been an argument. You walk in and you're like, oh, something's going down in here. Or
Yeah.
the nerves
Yeah.
in networking or going into your work social gathering. I remember that a lot, even though I'm really comfortable networking and socializing, I would feel this anxiety. Now I know I was feeling other people's nerves and experiencing it in my body, thinking it was mine. Now I know the difference. I can literally stop it or clear it and switch off, if you like, that. It's like a radio dial.
Right. Turning
And
it
so
down. Right.
well, turn down and switch it off.
So the important thing here is recognizing what's yours and what you're feeling from someone else.
That you might have the ability to do this. That was my first awakening going,
Yeah. Okay.
what?
So, I mean, I can understand why you felt the way you felt when you were growing up with this, not recognizing what it was, not having the language to describe it, and thinking there was something wrong with you.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people who are also empaths who grew up thinking there was something wrong with them. And that was so far from the truth. But isn't it, the journey we all go on to figure that out is, it's, obviously yours was significantly worse than many, right? With the attempt to suicide. But all right, so I want to be sure we get back to the leadership connection here too.
Yeah.
But let's stick with the empath here for a moment. How many empathy receptors do we have?
9 at least.
9 at least. Okay.
Yeah.
So what could give us some idea what those are?
Yes. So some of these we've heard of, but we maybe haven't thought of it in this way. Some people call them talents. Some people call them gifts. The language is yours. I like to use receptors because it feels a bit more pragmatic. So the first one is claircognizance. That is a understanding of. So cognizance is intelligent thought beyond our own knowing. So it's like a not intelligent. It's like it's a knowing. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a gut instinct of I just know. Some people call it calling, a divine guidance, and all of these terms are correct. It's what it means to you. It's the downloads of ideas or knowing what's going on with somebody else in their life. So that's a big one in my coaching work of I can almost know what they're about to say or what's going on that's causing what they're sharing with me. So it's a deep knowing that comes from outside our intelligence. That's one. Clair empathy, we've just talked about. It's the feeling in our body. Again, it's a different type of gut instinct in that, I mean, all of these are intuitive instincts, but they kind of come through different receptors and they all interweave. They're not in isolation. And then some more practical fun ones that I like to describe is clairgustance, which is tasting. So some genius who most likely has clairgustance intelligence came up with the delightful combination of salted caramel. Somebody either knew or anticipated that caramel with chunks of salt in it would be a good combination. Now, to most of us, we go like, what? That makes no sense at all. So clairgustance is a knowing about tastes and flavors, and they can usually identify like this little subtle secret ingredient. Clairgustance is all about the intelligence of taste. And then you've got people like sommeliers or the whiskey, I forget what they're called, the people who blend the flavors together. And then you've got the people who make perfumes. They've got the nose, which is salience. They can smell things that we wouldn't be able to necessarily identify or put things together. So there's wisdom through the sense of the receptors that is beyond basic knowing of the human body. Does that help?
I love this. I just the word wisdom came to my mind the moment you spoke it. It's the wisdom of the senses, right? So empathy comes in so many different ways, right? It comes to us in so many different ways. There's so many ways to receive it, which is why I really like the way you put it, that they are receptors. And knowing, being aware of it, right? Being aware that we all, I believe, we all have the capacity to know and feel things. How many times have you been talking with someone and all of a sudden some idea, stroke of brilliance came into your mind, you think, and it was just a momentary download from somewhere. It came to you and it was just the right thing to do or to say or to, yeah, it happens to me a lot. I really love having this conversation with you because it helps me know I'm not a little crazy here. And we use empathy every day, don't we? In our everyday lives, right? So let's
just like
talk
all our
about
other senses. Absolutely. It's not something you switch on. Well, you can control it a little bit, but like you don't just stop feeling in our physical body or smelling. It's
right,
there as part of
right.
us.
It's just there. So how do we utilize it to our advantage, right? In our lives, in our work, in our leadership.
I kind of like to, I've played on the words empathy. So if anybody likes to take notes, I'm an avid studious note taker. So if you want to write down the word empathy down the side of the page, the letters EM are about your emotions being open. So EM is emotions. So I'll go through the letters and then I'll bring it all together. The PA is your mind being open. And the thy is knowing yourself, that's your heart being open. So from a leadership point of view, how do we bring all of these things together, all aspects of ourself? Now, a big challenge, I think, and I'm again studious, so there's a couple of reports, and I'll make a note to give you those report links if people really wants to understand the studies. So I know one's by Gallup's, and I forget what the other one's by, but one's a global study of the workplace, and another one's the empathy in the workplace study, which is done annually by Gallup. And it's showing that not only is it productive, not only does it create efficient and ROI and all of the financial bottom lines that matter to companies and businesses. That's what they're in the business of. But it also helps the rapport. And if you look at it on a cycle, if you've got more rapport, you've got more trust, you've got more empathy within a team from leaderships in the workplace, they're happier, they're more productive, they're less distracted, there's less absenteeism. It's just a no-brainer to me for leaders to understand there is absolutely space and necessity of leading and understanding with empathy. The bottom line is proven to be improved with a happier workforce. We kind of know that. But how do you do that is probably what you're going to ask me next.
How did you know?
Because I remember. No, because it makes sense, right? How do we implement that?
Right.
The first is understanding your senses. If you are aware of one of your team members, I used to be an executive assistant. And for those who don't know what that means, that was it's the glorified secretary, the modern secretary. It's not glorified, it's the next level. My job was to anticipate their needs. But if they didn't understand me and where I was at and all the overwhelm of managing my own team of PAs under me, and the challenges and the pulls and tuggles I was gatekeeping for them from their managers, that balance between an executive and the assistant, if there's no empathy there, you are not getting the best out of each other. To know how to read a room when there's tension from your middle management or your direct reports, if you're coming in all business, blah, 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 and you're not taking just a couple of minutes, we're not talking bleeding heart stuff. We're not talking about doing HR's job for them. We're talking about building rapport that creates trust, that means your team will back you when the proverbial hits the fan, will come in to bat for you when something goes wrong, and will extend themselves to meet your goals, your KPIs, your directives from your top management. It's this beautiful system that just makes sense to understand your people better.
It's like, just be a good human.
Well, some people are really good at being human in ways that aren't actually helpful. But yes.
Well, that's why I said a good human, right?
Yes.
To be a good human. But understanding what other people might be going through. How many times have we heard that if you're looking at someone's life through social media, for instance, you don't have a clue what's going on behind the scenes, and it's all painted like a rosy picture. But what's going on behind the scenes is not available to you unless you probe into it. So, yeah, it's being a good human. I'm wondering about, you talked about this before. I know I've been accused of this myself. A lot of my clients tell me this too, that especially in corporate, women are, when they are seen as empathetic or compassionate, they are labeled as being too emotional or too sensitive. How do we reverse that? How do we show up in a different way without losing our compassion and our empathy? What do you think about that question?
Yeah, so if we come back to the how part, if we understand what our senses are, so let's use my example of anxiety, mild anxiety, like I didn't need medication. If we understand that I'm a receptor to other people's energies and learn how to protect that, and we can talk about that later if you wish, then when we're coming into rooms, dynamics, conversations, conflict, whatever the challenge could be, if we know how to shut that down or just kind of stop sensing other people's stuff so we can be in our own power. And what that means is just being congruent to where or what we want to achieve, where we want to go. What this conversation that I've considered in advance, I'm not hard fixed on it, but I'm my intention of what I want to deliver or what I want to get out of this conversation is clear. So staying in that energy is a definition of being in your own power. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be fluid and adaptable when we actually come into the conversation, into the scenario. The challenge for particularly women, because we are naturally, as child, I think the term would be bearers. I want to be politically correct there, but we're the ones that produce the offspring. We are more in tune with other humans. We are programmed that way. We all have different sensitivities. I'm talking about physiologically. And so if we can recognize we are better at receiving signals in a room or in a conflict, and we protect ourselves from that, we hold ourselves in the power, we can still tune into how they're responding, and we can respond to their responses more appropriately. Instead of being triggered or feeling that need to be fully empathetic and dropping the I'm a manager and I've delivered a hard message, or I'm sharing something that isn't popular, I'm not going to shift my stance to make it easier for them, because that's not appropriate. I still have to do my job. I still have to deliver this. Now, it's not being hard-assed. It's not being mean. It's just, I'm not going to buy into or align with other people's energies, because that's their experience and this is my job.
Interesting. I understand. I understand exactly where you're headed.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree that when we are clear with ourselves about our anticipated outcome, our desired outcome for whatever it is we are embarking on, walking into a meeting filled with people, and everyone has their agenda, and we have ours. So making sure that we show up in that authentic self that we are, right? We are empathetic people. That's the way, like you said, we're wired that way. That's our DNA. But making sure that we are not taking on the energy, negative probably, right? The negative energy that's coming from others, so that it affects how we are able to show up.
Yeah.
Is that right? Did I get that right?
I love it. Thank you, Maria. It's another way of describing exactly what I wanted to describe.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Sometimes I just have to put it in my own words, think it
Yeah.
through in my own head, and make sure I'm understanding
Yeah.
what. Yeah. So I get that. I think that's. I think that is. I'm often asked this question. Let me ask you. Do we have to change? This is the question I get asked. Do we have to change them, or do we have to change ourselves? I know what my answer always is. I'd love to hear what you think.
I'm trying to find a different way of explaining what we have heard before. And so I'm activating my cognizance now. I want to come back to the cartoon. So remind me on that, which beautifully articulates and gives a life example.
Now, this is a cartoon that, by the way, for those of you watching, we're not able to play for you, but we are going to give you the link too, so you can get it in the show notes.
Yeah. So I'm going to give some cognizant concepts, and then we'll use the cartoon description to kind of help kind of solidify it. We are an energetic being. The science is not about whether this woo-woo stuff is woo anymore. That has been proven. Get the book, The Biology of Belief, if you're thinking this is all a bit crazy. It's not trying to be decided anymore. It's been proven. Over 200 studies have proven this stuff is actually part of being a human being. What the science is now doing is studying how and when it happens so we can amplify it, we can leverage it, we can utilize it, we can manage it better. Okay, so parking all of that, this stuff is real. We can't control another human being. Many of us try constantly throughout days, through our children. We're always trying to manage what's happening to us. What is more successful is managing our own responses to the external influences.
The fact of the matter is, it's the only thing we have control over.
Indeed. So how do we control ourselves?
Yeah.
Well, first we're talking about understanding what's happening within this energy being, this energy field of cells that's vibrating and pulsing and doing all its things. So if we understand, I'm picking up energies that might be other people's anxiety. Well, if that's not my energy, I'm resonating like a mirror or a magnet, depending on what's happening. Okay, I'm going to switch that mirror around and let it bounce off. So, okay, so now I'm feeling less anxious. And so if I'm less anxious, the person who's being anxious or projecting or doing something that we don't like, that we want to change, then we're feeling different about it. And therefore what they're doing may not need to be changed. We're responding differently.
Because we're changing. Right?
And then we are maybe cognitively seeing it differently. The coaching term is reframing, having a different perspective. So if we've got a different perspective, the emotions that we are generating authentically within our body might be different, hopefully, if you're looking at the scenario without being charged or triggered or affected from the external. So go ahead and reframe that in any way that makes sense for the listeners to get another perspective.
Yeah, so in essence, there's nothing we need to do to change anyone else. The only thing we need to do is decide how we're going to respond to it and how we want to show up in that response.
I would like to add, and be aware of how we're responding. And it could be a bit of the why.
Yeah.
So is that something that's matching or mirroring or triggering?
Yeah. So I think what happens is when we decide that we're going to show up in a particular way, in our empathetic way, in this, whatever the situation is, but not take on all of the other emotion that's going on, because everybody's doing the same thing, right? Everybody's responding in their own way. Some people are more highly emotional than others. Others are very pragmatic. Others are very logical. Others are very shut down. You know, there's the gamut that we could face in a room full of people. The only thing we have to do is figure out how we want to show up and do that in the most authentic way, and teach others how we want to be treated.
There is another piece.
Okay.
So what's just coming through is this story or the example of a client I worked with a couple of months ago. So she went through 9/11 and she came to me with anxiety, obviously with PTSD issues, and things in her everyday life 10 years later are still triggering her.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. And when we did the healing of that, which is basically going into the subconscious, and we did not relive, we do not re-experience. Some modalities do. That's not how I work. We were able to isolate her in the moment. So she couldn't even talk about where she was and what happened during it. It was that traumatic for her.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a technique of being able to isolate yourself and saying, right, these are the moments of terror, absolute survival, petrification. Pause. It's like a time lapse. Stop. And help her soul, her higher self, her heart know that in the future she's going to be okay in this scenario. And then reframe herself that was about to experience what happened over the next couple of hours. And by addressing the subconscious memories that had all of the tension and all of the energy locked into her cells. So if you think of if you've ever been for a massage and then you've had that knot worked out and then you get a headache, that is the storage of the toxins in your cells. We know that. The energy is still there. That's what causes and holds on to the toxins that creates the headache. If we can clear those, which we can do subconsciously, by the end of the session, she was 12. In fact, I think it was 20 out of 10 when she thought about the moment, which she doesn't fully go into. So she was, I think it was something like 9, 10, 11, 12 out of 10 when she has a little episode, a mini episode that's really, really debilitating. But when she thinks about the experience, it's like 20 out of 10. By the end of the session, she's like, okay, I can talk about this. What? This is what's going on in our energy field.
Yeah.
So if we understand that some of our own stuff is then resonating, mirroring, or matching somebody else, then we are not being, heartache isn't happening to us. Our own heart, our own pain is being matched, mirrored, shown up, or antagonized by something happening outside.
So I want to tie this back to, as we wrap up here, I want to tie this back to, we don't, when we walk into a room of people, let's say it's in a corporate environment, we're going into a meeting, we don't really know what the agenda is, what everybody's agenda is, and we have our own. Because we don't know what's going on underneath everyone's presence there, what happened before they left for work, what happened on the way to work, what their relationships are like. We don't know any of that, or probably very little of it. The need to have empathy as a leader and in the workplace, to be a good human, I think it's becoming almost an overused term, but I don't think we should ever lose its true value.
The purpose of empathy is to connect.
Connect. The purpose of empathy is to connect. Love that. I love that.
And workplaces make connection wrong.
What do you mean by that?
Well, some places you can't have relationships. Now, we can understand some reasons why, but workplace relationships are no-nos in many environments.
Oh, yeah.
And then being too familiar, being too social, wasting time.
Yeah, so so much just depends on the culture, right? The culture that's created by the leaders, So if we have empathetic leaders, we typically would have, I would imagine, I would think, this is the way I did it anyway, as an empathetic leader, we would create an environment where people could be themselves and there was no judgment.
Building rapport
Building
equals
rapport.
productivity.
Yep. Yep. Building trust, all of those things.
It's like I'm shaking my head because I don't understand why
Yeah.
it's
I,
not
I
understood.
understand. I totally understand.
It's just mind-boggling because
Well,
I understand how much more I achieve when I work with others, when I have other support networks, when I feel supported and understood.
right. So why is it so hard within work environments without and yeah, I'm drawing some, vast generalizations here. But
I could
there are
go there.
so many work environments, right, that and that just are toxic. I talk to too many women
That
who
are
are in,
masculine based.
well, so I was just about to say, you're right. So they, not only that, they are masculine based, but they weren't created by us, right? By women. They were create for decades, centuries now, that created by men. And now we have to explain ourselves for being empathetic and compassionate and emotional and sensitive. So
I'm trying not to get in a soapbox. I'm waiting.
yeah. So we don't have time for the soapbox today, I'm afraid now. But yeah. This is a deep topic. It's why I wanted to cover it, and I feel like we only scratched the surface. That there's much more that we could talk about. So you and I will talk about that. But I'd love to wrap up with just some key takeaways from you, if you would, that our audience can take with them and think about, maybe start to practice. What you got for us?
Okay, how long have I got? How deep do I go?
So I want your top three, and I want you to hit them at the surface level so that people have a real good reason to reach out to you, connect with you, and go deeper.
Okay. All right. So the really high bullet point takeaways. One is to be aware and to maybe be a little assessment of self, of what and when and how do I feel emotions that kind of don't make sense. Not just emotions, but any of your senses. Goosebumps, gut instincts, the prickle of the red flags. If you get any of those, start to play with them. So that's my first high level, just awareness and experiment.
Okay, so all right. So you said one of my favorite things is when I get goosies, that's what I call them, get goosies when I hear something or I say something or I feel something that when I get those goosies, I just know it's right.
Correct.
We have to pay attention to those things.
It's a frequency of the earth, of universe, of each other, whatever you want to call it, God, of just
Yeah, there's
truth.
and we're feeling it. Our intuition is noticing.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
something beyond us.
Yeah, something
Um,
beyond us for sure. All right, number two.
Two is learning how to master those. Go figure. How do you amplify them? How do you know when to protect, which is my next piece. So it's how do you use, leverage, and have mastery? So it's learning about them. So first is awareness, and then when do you dial it up? When do you be more empathetic? And when do you dial that back down and go, now is not the time for me to be influenced by externals?
Okay, so mastery. learning to master what we're feeling, what we're knowing, and dialing it back so that it is situationally appropriate.
Beautifully said. Yes.
Okay. All right. Got that. That's a good one. Okay. Number 3.
The third takeaway is protecting. When I go networking, I've been doing it for a while. I'm in my 8th year now. And I know when there's people approaching me that aren't really my people, and there's no judgment. I just don't resonate. I don't gel with them. That's fine. So one of the things playing that I love to do is I put up a shield. I protect. So sometimes it's like a full Xena warrior shield that's as big as my body. That's really good if you know there's a narcissist coming. The other way, you can put a wall up. You can put a bubble. You can wear invisibility, a cloak. A cloak of invisibility. That's my favorite when I'm networking. Somebody coming on, calling, oh, I haven't got the energy. They're a bit of a vampire energy sucker. I put my cloak of invisibility on as I see them, and I kid you not, they flip and turn away as they're walking towards it. It's like they literally don't see me. And something happens. I put a cloak, and I just use this in my mind, in my imagination. Put my cloak up, and it's like they're repelled. So fun. So fun.
So this is something that takes practice. So, you know, I teach my clients about protecting themselves with a bubble.
Uh-huh.
And it's clear they're on the inside of it and they can see out.
Yep.
But the things that are coming at them just bounce off.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. This is not, you don't go into a wet networking environment with a real shield. There is no real shield. It's all here. It's all what we are doing to protect ourselves. Because we all have, I think, the tendency to be empaths. And if we don't do that, the unintended consequences are that we walk out of that networking environment totally drained. Our energy has been zapped. We don't know who took it. We don't know where it went. We just
we don't know how to get it back.
and we struggle to get it back. That's true. We do. Yeah. So finding ways, whatever it is for you, the bubble, the shield, literally there are ways to just let people know that it's not a good connection. Good ones. Good tips. Mel, you've kind of opened a treasure chest of stuff here that we could talk and go deeper on. Truly feel like we scratched the surface today. So I know that there are going to be people who are going to want to know more from you about what you know. And I would love to give them the opportunity to do that. So tell us, what is the one best way for them to reach out to you? And then I'll share with them that there will be other links for you.
The best, look, my calling in life is to bridge the logical and this intangible stuff. And one of my favorite things to do is to have a conversation to help people just start the awakening, the awareness piece. So if you want to have a conversation, this is not a sales call that's going to turn into trapping you into signing up for something. I love connecting with people who are curious about this stuff. So if you want to have a 20-minute time with me, my space is open for other empaths to be empowered, because you are the change makers of our future. We need you more than ever to be in your power. So if you want to have a 20-minute chat with me, you can go to my website and in the top corner, 20-minute chat button. Just have a conversation and get some free resources that Maria's going to share with you next.
Yep. Okay. All right. Mell, thank you so much. And her website is Mell, MELLB, as in Balment.com.
That'll be, yeah.
All right.
Balment's too hard. I just went B.
Mell B, the other Mell B, right?
Yes.
All right. I really thank you so much for being here. I love your energy. I love what you're sharing. I think we need to learn more about empathy and empaths, and how we can share our gifts to the world in a bigger way.
So we all use them. That's my goal.
Yeah,
Everyone use their powers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Mell. And for those of you watching and listening, I appreciate that you're a part of this community. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, comment, or click a star wherever you are. Let us know how you liked it. And as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for women. Plus, as a career and life coach, I love to help women navigate challenging times more quickly and gracefully and more easily. So if something in this episode resonates with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, reach out. Let's talk. Join me to continue this conversation in my private Facebook group, the Career Transition Roadmap. The link for that is below, along with the links for Mell's resources and every other way to reach the two of us. So let's meet again here next Wednesday for another inspiring conversation. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan. Till next time, I'm helping you turn transition into triumph.